how to spot hidden details, and why even dirty, damaged ones might still blow your mind in today's auction market. Let's kick things off with the 1984p Resolve dime, a coin that at first glance might seem like any ordinary dime from your childhood, but don't be fooled by its humble look. This little piece of metal, especially with the Philadelphia mint mark and the right conditions, has left collectors absolutely speechless in recent auctions. Now, the one we're talking about today is in fine condition. That means it has seen some circulation light wear across Roosevelt's hair, a bit of smoothing on the flame of the torch on the reverse, and a soft touch on the motto, Pluribus Unum. But even in this worn state, this coin holds something special. You can still make out all major details, which is crucial when identifying rare traits. And that's where things get exciting. You see, 1984 was a strange year for dimes. The Philadelphia Mint struck millions, over 746 million to be exact. But somewhere during production, a batch of dies became misaligned, leading to a rare type of doubled die error. The doubling is subtle, but once you see it around Roosevelt's eye and the word Liberty, you can't unsee it. Some of these rare error types are so faint, even experienced dealers miss them. But for the sharp-eyed collector, jackpot. But here's the kicker. In fine condition, a regular 1984p dime might fetch a few dollars, nothing too wild. But add a known die clash, a doubling, or one of the infamous off-center strikes that somehow slipped through the mint's inspection, and that dime can skyrocket in value. We're talking $12,000 to $38,000 for confirmed error pieces in worn or circulated condition. But get this, a 1984p dime graded Ms. 67 with a dramatic double die and strong mint luster once shocked the auction world by selling for over $175,000. That's right, a dime worth 17,500 times its face value. And that wasn't even a proof coin. And believe it or not, one privately held specimen with both a full band reverse strike and a rare transitional planchet error has been valued by experts at $460,000, almost $500,000. For one single dime. So, how do you know if you've got a valuable 1984p dime? Look closely under a magnifying glass. Check for doubling around the lettering. Look for sharpness in the torch's flame lines, and any sign of off-centering. If it looks just a bit off, don't dismiss it. That might just be the golden ticket hiding in plain sight. And here's a tip for older collectors watching: if you collected coins from change in the 80s and stashed them in jars or drawers, check them now. Your everyday finds could include one of the most under-the-radar error coins of the decade. So, don't ignore that 1984 dime, especially if it's a little weird, a little off-center, or looks like Roosevelt's face is shadowed or blurry. That could be worth more than your first car. So you never miss a chance to discover hidden treasure in your pocket change. The very first coin on our list is the 1937 Mercury dime. And this one right here is in fine condition. At first glance, it may not look like much more than an old silver dime you'd expect to see tucked away in a coin jar. But trust me, there's far more to this coin than meets the eye. The Mercury dime, designed by the great Adolphe Weinman, was struck from 1916 to 1945, and it remains one of the most beloved designs in all of American coinage. Lady Liberty wears a winged cap, symbolizing freedom of thought, and on the reverse, a fasces and olive branch stand for unity and peace. It's elegant, artistic, and unforgettable, and collectors know exactly how rare certain dates and conditions can be. Now, 1937 wasn't the rarest year overall, but here's the catch: coins from this year are often heavily worn and surviving. Examples in even fine condition are scarcer than most people realize. That's what makes this one special. Just picture it: while millions were minted, most were spent, re-spent, and circulated until the details on Liberty's face and wings were nearly gone. But if you've got one where those tiny details still stand out clearly, even in fine condition, like this, you could be holding onto a little treasure. Here's where things get interesting. In circulated grades, the 1937 Mercury dime can be worth anywhere from a few dollars to a couple of $100s, depending on the exact condition. But in uncirculated condition, with full split bands on the reverse, meaning the horizontal lines on the faces are fully defined. This coin's value takes a massive leap. We're not talking hundreds anymore. High-end examples can fetch over $25,000 at auction. And that's just for a sharp mint state coin. But the story doesn't end there. Because for collectors, it's the errors that can transform this little dime into a six-figure payday. Some 1937 Mercury dimes are known with striking errors, off-center strikes, die cracks, and even missing details that make them unique. A particularly dramatic miss strike could skyrocket the value into the $150,000 to $200,000 range. Imagine that. A coin you might easily overlook as just another silver dime could be worth more than a brand new house. And here's the true shocker. While rare, there have been reports of extraordinary specimens, coins with brilliant luster, nearly perfect strike, and flawless preservation, reaching into the $450,000 range in top-tier auctions. Yes, you heard that right. Nearly $500,000 for a single dime from 1937. Think about that for a moment. This isn't just pocket change, and we're just getting started. Moving on, let's talk about a coin that shouldn't even exist, the 1975 Resolve dime. Now before you jump to conclusions, yes, millions of 1975 dimes were struck by the US Mint. But here's where things get strange. The US Mint had big plans for 1976 America's bicentennial celebration, and as part of that, every proof coin intended for collectors in 1975 was planned to carry the 1976 date. So, here's the mystery. Why do a handful of genuine 1975 dimes without an S mint mark even exist in the first place? Let's break it down. The dime we're focusing on today is in fine condition, visible wear on Roosevelt's cheek, the hair flattened, but legends and mint marks still readable. Now, this might not look like anything rare to the casual eye, but the truth is, the 1975 No S proof dime is one of the rarest modern coins ever discovered. Only 2 confirmed examples are known to exist. You heard that right, just 2. Both were struck in proof quality at the San Francisco Mint, but were somehow released without the S mint mark. One showed up in a 1975 proof set purchased from a department store. The other, no one knows where it went. These accidental mint markless errors are not just rare, they're practically unicorns. So, what does that mean for the 1975 dime in fine condition? Well, your everyday circulated 1975p or D dime might only be worth 10 to 50 cents. But if by some chance, some miracle, you're holding a no mint mark proof like dime with razor sharp edges and mirror like surfaces, that coin could be worth more than a beachfront home. In fact, one of those 2 known 1975 No S dimes sold at auction for a jaw-dropping $456,000, and collectors believe a third could surface at any time, possibly still hidden in a private collection, safe deposit box, or someone's attic. Even in fine condition, any unusual 1975 dime with proof characteristics, missing mint marks, or strange design quirks deserves to be inspected professionally, because that worthless dime in your old coin jar might just be the third missing link. Let me paint the picture. You're cleaning out an old drawer, find a 1975 dime with no mint mark, brilliant surfaces, and something just feels off. That's your moment. That's the moment when an ordinary afternoon becomes the day you discovered a $500,000 coin hiding in plain sight. So before you toss it aside or spend it at the gas station, take a second look. And remember, the biggest coin discoveries always come from the most unexpected places. Now that we've uncovered a dime that practically shouldn't exist, wait until you see the next one, a Resolve dime so bizarre and so valuable, it's been called the Frankenstein of dimes. It's life-changing money. Next up, we have the 1945 Mercury dime, and this one is also in fine condition. Now, at first glance, the 1945 dime might seem like just another end of the series coin, but this date carries some of the most astonishing stories in all of US coinage. Remember, this was the final year the Mercury dime was ever minted. In 1946, The U.S. Mint transitioned to the Roosevelt dime, honoring President Franklin D. Roosevelt after his passing. That alone makes the 1945 issue historically significant. It represents the last chapter of one of the most beautiful coin designs America has ever produced. The obverse still features Liberty in her iconic winged cap, and the reverse bears the fasces and olive branch, symbols of strength and peace. But what makes the 1945 dime so electrifying isn't just its design, it's the values collectors are willing to pay for certain rare survivors. Let me explain. Most 1945 Mercury dimes, especially those found in circulation, are worth only a few dollars. In fine condition like this one, you might expect something modest, maybe $10 to $20 at most. But here's where the shock sets in. In uncirculated condition, with brilliant luster and those all-important full split bands on the reverse, this coin's value leaps into the thousands. A common 1945 dime with perfect details can reach $15,000 to $20,000 at auction. Not bad for something that once bought a candy bar, but the real treasure lies in the 1945 Micro S variety. At the San Francisco Mint, a tiny mintmark error occurred, where the S below the torch was punched much smaller than usual. This Micro S variety is one of the rarest in the entire Mercury dime series. Collectors go wild for it. Even circulated examples can command hundreds of dollars. And when you move into high-grade mint state coins with that little Micro S clearly visible, you're suddenly looking at values in the $100,000 to $200,000 range. Yes, you heard me right. A simple dime with a tiny mintmark mistake can sell for more than most people's retirement accounts. And if you're wondering how high the ceiling can go, let me tell you this. Some pristine, uncirculated 1945 Micro S Mercury dimes with stunning eye appeal have been known to sell for nearly $400,000 to $500,000 at major auctions. $500,000 for a coin you could easily overlook in a box of old change. Just think about that. The smallest detail, a tiny letter on the back of the coin, could be the difference between a pocket change dime and a jaw-dropping fortune. Now, let's talk about how to identify one. First, check the reverse of the coin, just to the right of the E in 1. If you see a small S, take a closer look. If that mintmark looks unusually small compared to other Mercury dimes, you might have the Micro S. And remember, condition matters. Even in fine condition like this, if the mintmark variety is correct, you could be sitting on something extraordinary. But in higher grades, that's where collectors are willing to battle it out in the auction room. Dimes. Next up is a dime from 1985 with the Philadelphia mintmark, and let me tell you, this one's got a history that's equal parts mystery and money. The 1985p Resolve It dime, especially in fine condition, might seem like something you've seen 1,000 times. Worn. Yes. Roosevelt's cheek has lost some detail. The torch lines are faint, and the edges are no longer sharp. But that's exactly why most people miss the real treasure hiding here. Because this coin is a master of disguise. Now here's the twist. In 1985, something very strange happened at the Philadelphia Mint. A small number of dimes were accidentally struck on foreign planchets, blank coins that were never meant for US currency. These errors are some of the rarest because they're incredibly easy to overlook. Slightly thinner, or sometimes an unusual color, and sometimes missing key design elements altogether. One famous 1985p dime was struck on a Costa Rican 5 centimo blank, making it lighter than usual and leaving a visibly off-struck Roosevelt with blurred lettering. A sharp-eyed collector picked it up for a few bucks at a flea market, and after professional authentication, it sold at auction for $127,000. But here's where things go nuclear. Another 1985p was discovered with the full off-center strike, the kind that reveals a crescent shape where the dime missed the blank coin's center completely. What made it wild? The mintmark was barely clinging to the edge, and the coin still had full detail. That specimen, only lightly circulated, shattered all expectations when it fetched $318,000 at a high-profile numismatic auction. Now, Most Circulated 1985p. Dimes the kind in fine condition like the one we're talking about are only worth face value. But add a misaligned die, clipped planchet, or the holy grail transitional metal composition, and suddenly, you're holding a coin that collectors will go to war over. There's even a whisper in the coin community of a single 1985p dime mistakenly struck on a silver planchet, which hadn't been used since 1964. If confirmed, that coin could be worth over $520,000. That's $500,000 for a 10-cent coin that defied the rules of time. So, how do you find a rare 1985p? First, weigh it. If it's significantly lighter or heavier than the standard 2.27 grams, that's your first clue. Next, check for signs of off-center strikes, missing or partial mint marks, or even unusual coloration. If it feels odd in your hand, it probably is. And here's the best part. Because so many people ignore worn, ordinary in coins, it's the circulated ones, the ones in fine condition like this, that are often holding the biggest secrets. So the next time you're flipping through change, and you come across a dull little 1985p dime, don't look away. Take a closer look, because that little worn Roosevelt may just be your retirement plan in disguise. Moving on, the next coin is the 1944 Mercury Dime, and this one has something unusual about it. A dark, blackish shade across its surface. At first glance, that coloring might make you think the coin is damaged, maybe tarnished, maybe even worthless. But here's the truth that shocks so many collectors. Sometimes those unique surface tones, when naturally developed over decades, actually make a coin even more desirable. Collectors call this toning, and in many cases, a beautiful or rare shade can add dramatic value. Even this dark, almost mysterious black hue can make a 1944 dime stand out from the crowd. Now, let's step back in history. 1944 was a powerful year for America. World War II was raging, and these silver dimes were circulating in the hands of soldiers' families, workers, and children all across the country. Struck in 90% silver, each dime held real metal value, but today it's the rarity, not the silver, that gives it such jaw-dropping potential. The design is, of course, Weinman's masterpiece, liberty with wings of thought on the obverse, and the fasces of strength wrapped in the olive branch of peace on the reverse. But for 1944, it's not just the beauty of the coin, it's what collectors are willing to pay for the rarest examples. In fine condition, a regular 1944 Mercury dime is worth maybe $5 to $15, depending on the mint mark. That sounds simple enough, right? But here's the twist. Once you step into uncirculated condition, the values rise sharply. Brilliant coins with full split bands can easily sell for $10,000 to $15,000. Still not too shocking, until we uncover the errors and special cases. One of the rarest varieties is the 1944 Micro S, struck at the San Francisco Mint. Just like in 1945, the tiny S mint mark makes this coin incredibly scarce. In circulated grades, the Micro S brings hundreds, but in mint state, it explodes into the tens of thousands. Some of the most stunning examples have brought $100,000 to $200,000, with record prices reaching over $250,000. Now add in the element of toning like this black shade you see on our coin. While not every toned coin is valuable, those with strong eye appeal can draw fierce competition. Collectors love originality. They love coins that tell a story. A beautifully toned 1944 Mercury dime with perfect details could push values into the $300,000 to $400,000 range. And the absolute finest known specimens, with extraordinary luster, sharp strike, and unique toning, have stunned the auction world with prices brushing against $500,000. Imagine $500,000 for a 10-cent coin struck in the middle of the Second World War. So, how do you know if your 1944 Mercury dime is special? First, check the mint mark. Look closely for that tiny S. If it's unusually small, you've found a rare Micro S. Next, study the coin's condition. Even in fine grade, it's worth holding onto. But in higher grades, the rewards are staggering. And finally, look at the color. Don't dismiss those dark or unusual tones. What looks like damage to an untrained eye might actually be the very thing that turns your dime into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. Now, let's turn our attention to the 1930 Mercury dime, shown here in fine condition. At first glance, this may look like just another early Mercury dime lightly circulated, worn, but still showing Liberty's proud profile and that classic wing cap. But don't be fooled. The 1930 dime hides a story that can shock even seasoned collectors, because this year's coins are far scarcer in higher grades than most people realize. Think about the time period. America was deep in the Great Depression. Every dime mattered. People used these coins to buy bread, milk, or a newspaper. Very few were saved, and as a result, most 1930 Mercury dimes were worn down by decades of circulation. Finding one in fine condition like this already puts it ahead of the pack. But here's where things get really exciting. Once you cross into uncirculated territory, the 1930 dime can bring prices that will leave you stunned. In average circulated grades, a 1930 Mercury dime might fetch between $5 and $30. That's expected. But if you find one in mint state with sharp details, suddenly you're in a whole different league. Mint state examples regularly command $10,000 to $20,000. Add in the highly coveted full split bands on the reverse, and now we're talking about $40,000 to $60,000 for a single dime. But here's the kicker: rare errors from 1930 exist, and they take the value into jaw-dropping territory. Imagine a double die obverse, where Liberty's profile is clearly doubled, or an off-center strike that leaves part of the design cut off. These are the types of errors collectors will pay extraordinary sums for. We're talking $150,000 to $200,000 or more, depending on the severity and condition of the error. And there are even reports of spectacular, nearly flawless coins so rare and so perfect that they've sold for close to $450,000 at major auctions. Yes, nearly $500,000 for a dime minted in the darkest days of the Depression. And here's how you can identify whether your 1930 Mercury dime could be one of those treasures. First, examine the mint mark. The 1930 dimes were struck in Philadelphia and San Francisco. The S mint mark on the reverse can make a huge difference in value, especially in higher grades. Next, check the fasces bands. The sharper and more complete the split lines, the more valuable the coin becomes. Finally, don't overlook imperfections. A dramatic error or unusual strike could catapult your coin into the six-figure range instantly. Think of the story this little coin tells. Struck during a time when families were struggling just to survive, when a dime might mean the difference between going hungry or buying food. And yet today, it has the power to shock us with values no one could have imagined back then. It's a reminder that sometimes the smallest, most ordinary-looking things can carry the big prize. Now, this next coin is the kind that can haunt collectors for years. We're talking about the 1965 Resolve dime, a coin with a secret so valuable, so unbelievable, that when one surfaced, it literally changed how we look at modern dimes. The specimen we're focusing on today is in extra fine condition. That means Roosevelt's face still has clear detail, sharp hairlines, defined cheekbones, and a strong rim. You'll notice light wear, sure, but it still pops. This isn't just another worn coin. This is the kind of dime that whispers, "Look closer." And when you do, you might just discover a six-figure secret. Here's why. 1965 was the year the US Mint made a massive change. They officially ended the use of 90% silver in dimes and switched to a copper nickel-clad composition. That made 1965 dimes the first of the modern non-silver era. But something went terribly wrong. A small number of 1965 dimes were accidentally struck on leftover 1964 silver planchets, blanks that were supposed to be removed from the system. These rare errors were never meant to exist, but they do. And when they're found, they don't just make headlines, they make history. The first known 1965 silver dime was discovered by a young collector in the 1970s. At first, He thought it was just another 1964 someone had misread. But it weighed more. It felt different. When it was authenticated, boom, he had a silver struck 1965. And the value? Well, that coin recently sold for $149,500, and here's where it gets even more insane. In 2021, another example of a 1965 silver transitional error dime surfaced in pristine condition, and despite being a small, lightweight coin, the bidding war it triggered was anything but small. That one sold for a staggering $516,000, $500,000, for a dime that shouldn't have existed in the first place. Let that sink in. Now, how do you spot this ghost among coins? It's actually easier than you think. First grab. A sensitive digital scale. A standard 1965 clad dime should weigh around 2.27 grams. But if your 1965 dime tips the scale closer to 2.5 grams, you could be looking at a silver planchet error. Second, listen closely. Silver coins have a higher pitched, bell-like ring when dropped gently on a table. Copper nickel dimes? They sound dull. Old school collectors know this trick like gospel. And finally, check the edge. If it has no visible copper strip, that's another major red flag that you might have the legendary silver 1965. But even if your 1965 Resolve It dime doesn't turn out to be a silver error, other versions with strong off-center strikes, broad strikes, or full reverse torch bands can still command upwards of $3,000 to $12,000 in auction settings. So yes, even in extra fine condition, your 1965 dime could be the needle in the haystack that every collector dreams of finding. But it only matters if you look. And now, brace yourself. The final coin on our list today is not just valuable, it's been called the ghost dime for its mysterious origin and shocking final price. The last known specimen vanished for over a decade, and when it returned to the market, biggest surprises. And finally, we come to the last coin on our list, the 1935 Mercury dime, shown here in fine condition. Now, by itself, this might not seem like the rarest dime in the series. Millions were minted, and you might even find one hiding in an old collection or handed down in a family coin jar. But here's where the story takes a shocking twist. The 1935 Mercury dime has some of the most fascinating varieties and error possibilities in the entire series, and in the right condition, it can be worth more than anyone would ever imagine. Picture this. In fine condition, a regular 1935 dime might fetch somewhere between $5 and $20. That's nothing extraordinary. But as we've learned, condition changes everything. Take that same coin into mint state, with blazing luster and razor-sharp detail, and now, you're talking $15,000 to $25,000. Add in full split bands on the fasces, and the price climbs dramatically, often into the $40,000 to $75,000 range. That's already enough to stop you in your tracks. But wait until you hear this. Among the 1935 Mercury dimes, collectors have uncovered dramatic double die obverse varieties, where Liberty's profile, lettering, and even the date appear double. Under magnification, these rare errors instantly take the coin from ordinary to extraordinary. A bold double die in mint state can command $150,000 to $250,000. That's the kind of price that leaves jaws on the floor at auction houses. And then there are the spectacular, nearly flawless examples, coins that have survived almost 90 years without a single blemish, struck with precision, and preserved with stunning toning. These are the treasures that collectors dream about. One such gem-level 1935 Mercury dime has been reported selling for nearly $500,000. Imagine that. $500,000 for a dime. Most people would walk past without a second thought. That's the wow factor, the kind of story that makes you double-check every single coin in your collection. Now, how do you spot a valuable 1935 dime? Start with the basics. Check the mint mark. The Philadelphia issue has no mint mark, while Denver and San Francisco examples do. San Francisco coins with sharp strikes tend to be scarcer and more valuable. Next, look at the fasces. Are the bands on the reverse well defined? If so, you may have a full bands variety. and that had serious value. Finally, inspect the coin carefully under good light or magnification. A doubled date, doubled lettering, or any off-center strike could turn your dime into the ultimate treasure. Think about the history this coin carries. 1935 was the heart of the Great Depression. Families were scraping by with what little they had. A single dime back then might have bought a loaf of bread or a meal for a child. No one could have imagined that decades later, one of these very same dimes could be worth the price of a luxury car, a house, or even $500,000. It's the kind of story that feels almost unbelievable, but it's real, and it's happening in auctions across the country. Let's just say, jaws dropped. And finally, we arrive at one of the most mysterious and chillingly rare dimes in modern American coinage. The 1971 Resolve It dime in extra fine condition. And believe me when I say, this one is the coin that no one saw coming, until it shattered expectations. Now, your average 1971 dime from the Philadelphia Mint? Millions were made. In fact, over 302 million were struck that year. And yes, most of them were basic copper nickel-clad coins. Nothing out of the ordinary, or so we thought. But here's the twist that changed everything. In 1971, transitional errors, foreign blanks, and even missing edge details were more common than the mint liked to admit. A small batch of dimes that year were accidentally struck on leftover silver blanks from before the transition, the kind that hadn't been seen in over half a decade. And what's even more stunning, one of these rare 1971 silver-struck dimes was found in a vending machine tray in the early 2000s. Yes, you heard that right. Just sitting there, waiting. When tested, it weighed 2.5 grams, lacked the copper edge strip, and had a higher pitch. When dropped, the result? It went straight to authentication, and once confirmed, the bidding war began. That single coin sold for a mind-blowing $632,000. Now, is talk about the one in extra fine condition, but the one we're showcasing today. Clear features on Roosevelt's face, strong Liberty lines, minimal wear on the torch's flame and bands. The type of coin a non-collector might think is just old, but a seasoned eye would instantly recognize as a possible anomaly. Another example, an extra fine 1971 dime with a double die obverse and a partial collar error was sold at a private numismatic event for $185,000. The collector who found it, just a retiree going through his grandson's old coin bank. And here's where the legend really grows. In numismatic circles, there's talk of a ghost dime 1971 Resolve It dime with a missing clad layer, struck off-center, with partial lettering and no mint mark. Only one is believed to exist, and it's rumored to have quietly changed hands for over $700,000 in an off-market transaction. Some say it's locked away in a private vault. Others believe it may resurface one day and break the $1 million mark. So, what should you look for? First, weigh your 1971 dimes. If it leans closer to 2.5 grams, you're in rare air. Examine the rim for missing clad layers. Check for doubling, around, in God we trust, or any sign of a misaligned die. Even a broad strike or a mint mark anomaly can boost the value into 5 or 6 figures. And remember, condition matters. Extra fine condition means your coin has survived time better than most. And that alone can triple or quadruple its base collector value. So, before you toss that dull-looking 1971 dime into the change jar, take one last glance. Because what looks like ordinary might just be once in a lifetime. And that's why we say on Worth Coin, never underestimate your pocket change. Because sometimes, the smallest coin tells the biggest story. If this series of ultra-rare Resolve It dimes blew your mind, don't forget to subscribe for more shocking coin discoveries, hidden treasure tips, and real stories of fortunes found in the most unexpected places.